Welcome to today's presentation on all the dirt on native seed collection, brought to you by the Charles County Master Gardeners and the Southern Maryland Audubon Society. Master Gardeners are volunteers trained and supported by the University of Maryland Extension. Our mission is to educate the public about safe, effective, and sustainable horticulture practices. We are part of the University of Maryland College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. I'm Marlene Smith, a Charles County Master Gardener and a member of the Southern Maryland Audubon Society. I'm a native plant enthusiast, although some may say I'm a nerd, striving to rewild my lawn. My goals are to protect and welcome pollinators and invertebrates to my property, which in turn attracts and supports birds and other wildlife. And I'm here today with my colleague Molly Moore.
And I'm president of Southern Maryland Audubon. I'm also a Charles County Master Gardener and a Maryland Master Naturalist based at the Nanjemoy Creek Environmental Education Center. Southern Maryland Audubon, we cover Charles, St. Mary's, Calvert, and a sliver of Prince George's County. And as bird people, we are native plant evangelists because birds cannot thrive without the life cycle of native plants, both for the seed, the shelter, and the insects they bring. So if you want more birds in your yard, plant more native plants.
You might be wondering why collect native seeds. The idea for this presentation came up during our All the Dirt on Winter Sowing workshop last year. Recognizing it was a topic of interest to us and other gardeners, we decided to share what we've learned through our personal experiences. So why native seeds? First, there are horticultural reasons. Native plants are adapted to our environment, and they provide native habitat for insects, birds, and other wildlife. Native plants help preserve genetic diversity necessary to sustain healthy populations of plants. And collecting seeds of native plants can provide access to hard-to-find plant species not available commercially. And beyond the horticulture reasons for collecting native plant seeds, it's educational. I've learned a lot following the life cycle of a plant, starting from seed and then watching it go to seed. It's easy, anyone can do it. It's a fun hobby that can be therapeutic and potentially addicting. Collecting seeds lets you share and trade with other gardeners. And it's an economical and budget-friendly way to get new plants.
And to give you an example of how budget-friendly, this is some of my cardinal flowers in my garden. I grew them from seeds that I winter sowed, and I transplanted about 60 plants into my garden. Well, at the going rate of about $6 a quart now for native plants in the nurseries, this is about a $390 value in my front yard that I got for absolutely $0.
So in this presentation, we'll walk you through 10 steps to native seed collection. First, we'll tell you about observing ethical collection guidelines, accurately identifying your source plants, learning to recognize when seeds are ready, gather your collection materials, collect your seeds, dry seeds, clean your seeds, store the seeds, any special handling, there's a category we'll address, and next steps after you've collected, which could be sharing, swapping, or winter sowing. So first, let's talk about ethical native seed collection. Know what the species is and its status prior to collecting. Never collect seeds from rare, threatened, or endangered plants. And you can always check the list of these plants on the Maryland DNR website. Always get permission to collect seeds on private or public lands. Don't just grab a stem from your neighbor's garden or on a walk through your favorite park. It's actually against the law to collect anything from federal or state land without a permit. Depending on what you read, it is recommended that you pick no more than 10 to 30% from wild populations. Remember, you don't need a lot. Leave the rest for the plants to reseed and to provide food for wildlife. The seeds of native plants feed goldfinches, juncos, and many other birds and wildlife throughout the winter. Collect seeds only from healthy plants with desirable traits. Avoid collecting seeds from diseased plants. And don't collect in the rain or right after the rain. Next, you want to identify your source plants. So what type of native plants can you collect from? You can collect seeds from annuals, which are the seeds that only grow in one season, biennials, which are your plants that grow for 2 years. The first year they set their leaves and the next year they will bloom and set seed, and perennials, which are the plants that come back year after year. You can also collect from vines, shrubs, trees, grasses, and sedges. Select plants while the flowers are in bloom. Many plants are less noticeable once they stop flowering. This slide shows an example of Monarda fistulosa's distinct bloom in the summer versus the less distinct seed heads during the winter. Keep records of the locations of the plants from which you want to harvest seeds, and if necessary, mark with flags, flagging tape, string, mesh bags, or other means. Recognizing when seeds are ready. Successful collection of viable seeds requires an understanding of when to collect, how to store, how to process, and when to sow. In general, you want to wait 6 to 8 weeks after blooms have finished. Once ripe, the seed structure and the area where the seed structure attaches to the stem should be brown or tan, at which time the seeds are no longer getting nutrients from the plant and they're ripe. Immature seeds are difficult to remove from a healthy plant, while ripe seeds will fall out or separate easily from the plant when they are ready to begin their new life. Under ideal conditions, collect seeds just after the seed has ripened, but before it has fallen off the plant or been eaten by wildlife. For some species, you may want to use techniques like organza bags or rubber bands to contain seeds until ripe. But wait, to complicate matters, not all seeds on the same plant ripen at the same time. Some seeds ripen and disperse suddenly. Others ripen slowly, a few seeds or pods at a time over days or weeks, like in the top photo of the zizia, which shows the difference in the ripeness of the seeds on the same plant the same day. You can see in the lower left-hand corner where they're dark, they're ripe, and in the upper right-hand corner, they're still green. They're not ready to be harvested yet. Also, some seeds ripen in sequence from the bottom of the stem upwards for several weeks, like the Lobelia cardinalis pictured in the bottom left, while others ripen from the top of the stem down, like the Liatris in the bottom photo. That will kind of allow you to judge where to look for the ripe seeds on those two different varieties, whether they'll be ripe on the top or the bottom first. And remember, record keeping is critical. So when's the best time to collect native seeds? There are many charts available online, and we've included links to several charts on our resource page. But it's always best to check your local site conditions rather than relying on historical dates. In this sample chart, you can see the harvest dates of various seeds that we'll use as examples throughout the presentation. Note that some seeds are ripe in late spring, others in summer, and still others not until fall. And why is that? Bloom time, pollination, and subsequent seed ripening varies according to local weather, moisture, sun exposure, and topography, which are the slopes, hills, and valleys, all of which create microclimates in the habitat and affect collection dates. Also, the time of year when seeds ripen not only determines when to harvest seeds, it also determines when seeds should be sown. In general, seeds collected in the spring should be sown right away because they don't like to dry out. And most spring seeds require both warm and moist stratification to stimulate their germination. On the other hand, seeds ripening in the summer, such as July or later, can be stored and sown in the fall or even in the winter. We highly recommend that you have a plan before harvesting seeds, especially of uncommon species. Most items you need to collect seeds are readily available around your house. You don't need anything special. You'll need some containers. You can use almost anything, such as envelopes, paper bags, or shopping bags, cups, buckets, or anything else you have on hand. The only word of caution is we don't recommend collecting in plastic, because if you collect in plastic and the seeds can't dry out, you're prone to fungal or bacterial growth, which can affect the viability of the seeds. You may need scissors, knife, pruner, etc. to cut the stems. And if you're collecting seeds from plants that are thorny or have stems with sharp edges or sharp seed heads like coneflowers, you may want to wear gloves to protect your hands. And don't forget markers or pens to label your bags or containers as you collect the seeds. Trust me, you won't remember what they are if you don't label them at the time of collection. I've had multiple bags of seeds sitting that I have no idea until I sow them and they germinate because I forgot to label them. Moving on to collecting your seeds, once you've gathered your materials and you go out to collect the seeds, label your collection containers. We can't stress labeling enough. And like the top photo shows, you want to include the common name, the Latin name, the date of collection, and where it was collected. You want to remove individual seeds and/or the seed structures from the plant and place them in the collection container, seed heads down and stems up. And you want to pay careful attention to different collection methods for each type of seed structure, which we'll go over next. Remember that proper seed collection is the first step to successfully growing native plants from seeds. And now I'll turn it over to Molly to introduce us to the different types of seed structures.
Thanks, Marley. So what's next? The most important part of harvesting native seeds is to know your seed groups. It's the key to knowing when to harvest, and how to store your native seeds. So when Marlene stumbled across a presentation a couple of years ago that explained the different types of seed structures, it made a big difference in the winter sowing the next year and its success. So native seeds can be divided into two major groups, which we'll call time-sensitive and mama's boys. So time-sensitive seeds ripen and disperse in a few days or weeks, and they are dispersed by wildlife, knowing the perfect moment to eat the seeds, or to the wind carrying the seeds away when they're ripe, or to seeds just dropping on the ground around the parent plants. The second type of seeds are called mama's boys, and these are the seeds that linger on the stem for weeks or even months after they ripen. They're kind of like the adult children that might be living in your basement. So knowing the seed structures can save you time later when it comes to cleaning and storing the seeds. So let's take a deeper dive on the different seed groups. In the time-sensitive group, you have these varieties. So the first are the Elaeosums, my new word for this presentation. And they include plants like twin leaf, bloodroot, and shooting star. Next are the ballistics, and those are partridge peas, New Jersey teas are ballistics, and jewelweed. And then come the fluffy plants, pussy toes, New England aster, and goldenrod. The milkweed dogbane family can include butterfly weed, swamp milkweed, and of course dogbane. And then there are the berries like the jack in the pulpit, the coral honeysuckle, and the beautyberry. So let's talk about Elaeosums for a second. They have these fleshy structures that are attached to the seeds that are very nutrient rich in lipids and proteins. And sometimes they're referred to as ant candy because ants are strong and motivated, and they're able to quickly carry the candy back to feed their larvae, and they toss the seeds into their compost piles. So a few examples of Elaeosums that we have up here are the twin leaf that we mentioned before, also wild ginger, Dutchman's breeches, and bloodroot. So to harvest Elaeosums, you have to check the seed heads frequently because the ants will rapidly beat you to every one of the seeds. These seeds have higher germination rates when they're sown within a day or two of you harvesting them. On to the ballistic capsules. They get their name because they catapult their babies up to several feet away from the parent plants. The seed is forcefully ejected by flinging the seeds from the parent plant. Just one drop of water can explode a ripe jewelweed capsule. The elongated valves split or burst open, tightly coiling inwards, ejecting the seeds up to 6 feet away, and hence another of its common names, which are touch-me-nots. A few examples you can see up here of the ballistic capsules are orange jewelweed, wild geranium, partridge pea, woodland phlox, and New Jersey tea. So harvesting these seeds is tricky. You have to learn the ripening sequence and harvest just before the explosion. The best technique is to cover with a sealed paper bag or a mesh bag for a day or two before you think they're going to eject, and it allows them to eject in the bag. Or you can snip the entire stem when the seeds have ripened and put it in a paper bag and seal the bag. After the seeds have popped inside the bag on the plant, whether you have it in a bag indoors or you've put it over the seed head outdoors, carefully open the bag and collect the seeds. A little symphony of ballistic capsules, thanks to the Smithsonian. The first you're going to see are violets, then jewelweed, then squirting cucumber. So pretty cool, huh? Well, fluffy seeds are pretty cool too. They're among all of our favorites. They're some of our most common natives with their feather duster or puffball seed heads, which are technically called pappus. So the fluff, or the pappus, allows wind to move the seeds over long distances or to be carried by animals on their fur or their hair. They can also be carried on your jeans or your shirt sleeves. Spring fluffy seed heads are typically more sensitive to strong weather and wind. You'll instantly recognize some of these examples, including pussy toes, and goldenrods, asters, joe pye, and white snakeroot. All of these except the pussy toes you can see out now in your garden and in the roadsides. You can see their seed heads. So collect these when they are fluffy. It's okay to collect the seeds slightly early by collecting the entire stems with seeds that are either fully poofed or have dropped their colorful petals. Snip the stems and let them poof in a bag or the mesh bag that you've put out. They can be stored with the fluff once they're completely dry. So milkweed seeds is another group. Most of them are ready to harvest now, the milkweed and the dogbanes. They have seed structures known as follicles that split open along one seam when they're ripe. And that reveals the brown seeds on the white, silky, filament-like hairs that's referred to as milkweed floss or seed fiber. Although we typically refer to the seed structures of milkweed or dogbane as pods, pods are technically legumes which split along two seeds from the top to bottom. Milkweed seeds become windborne when they're left on the plant, and they're carried away by the filaments that allow them to float in the air. So to harvest milkweed, ignore the pod color. It might still be green. Put a rubber band around the unripe pods or cover it with an organza bag to prevent the seeds from fluttering away. And to clean and store them, remove the seeds from filaments, like you see Marlene doing in this video. You can see how she holds the open pod firmly with the bottom between her thumb and her fingers, just above the seeds. And then with her other hand, you begin pulling the fluff out of the pod. And after several attempts, you should be able to get to the central core of the fluff. After the fluff and the core have been removed, all the seeds should remain in the pod, and the ripe seeds will be brown, like you see here. So one note for the birds. You might want to save the filaments and put them outside in the springtime for the hummingbirds to use in building their nest. So berries are a simple fruit with seeds stored in a juicy flesh that's called the pericarp. The berry turns a vibrant color and becomes mushy when it's ripe, which is an advertisement to the wildlife and birds to eat me and disperse me around the area. The birds and wildlife disperse the seeds by either chewing them or, in the case of birds, swallowing them whole. Then they digest them and then they disperse them in their fertilizer, sometimes long distances away from the plants. Some examples of berries are coral honeysuckle, pawpaw, jack in the pulpit, chokeberry, and of course beautyberry. So to harvest berries, you collect them when they're ripe before the wildlife devour them. You can cover them with mesh bags while they're ripening. The seeds within the berries and drupes, and we're going to talk about drupes in just a second, are not accustomed to drying out, and they need to be sown fresh in damp soil or cleaned and stored in plastic in the refrigerator, which maintains a higher level of humidity. It's best not to air dry berries before removing the flesh. Let's meet the drupes. Berries and drupes are often confused. A drupe is a simple fruit made up of a thin outer skin called an exocarp, the middle flesh called the mesocarp, and the inner or hard stone that's the endocarp. So here, dogwoods and fringe trees are great examples. And here you see one of my very favorite native trees, which is the fringe tree. So it has these gorgeous silky white flowers in the spring, and then these voluptuous purple-blue drupe clusters in the fall for about 2 weeks. This northern mockingbird and his family devoured every drupe on my friend's tree over the course of about 10 days. And another one of my favorites that has drupes is the sweet bay magnolia. So you've seen this, probably a lot of you have seen this one. It has these creamy, fragrant white blossoms in the spring and brilliant red combs in the fall. And again, over the course of 2 weeks, this red-eyed vireo and this summer tanager, along with some of their friends, the woodpeckers, ate just about every drupe on 2 sweet bay magnolias that I have in my yard. So nature has planned this pretty well. The birds were chowing down on this just as they're getting ready to bulk up for their migration, or either to just bulk up for winter and stay here all winter. So you should feel okay about ethically claiming a few of the drupes from the plants. And again, you can do them like we talked about, covering them with bags. But the real joy is providing this amazing native bird feeder in the fall. So the next group we're going to talk about are the mama's boys. I'm going to turn that over to Marlene to talk about.
So the second set of seeds are called the mama's boys, which are the seeds that will remain on the stem for a while, often for weeks or even months. And most of these seeds are collected in the fall, summer or fall, and dried before storing. And some of the examples: short-tooth mountain mint, wild bergamot, obedient plant. There are beaks, which are wild columbine, foxglove beard tongue, and turtlehead. Then there are the coneheads, the purple coneflower, the cutleaf coneflower, the oxeye sunflower, another variety called crumbly coneheads, which is sneezeweed, yellow crownsbeard, and buttonbush. A category we called shatterers, which are things like false nettle, purple lovegrass, and golden alexander. And then finally the hitchhikers, which is the panicled tick trefoil, Spanish needles, and beggar ticks. So first up are the shakers, like this eastern bee balm on the slide. They have petals or florets which fall off, leaving a tube-shaped calyx behind. Seeds are inside these tubes and can remain inside the tubes for weeks. With shakers, the seeds are naturally shaken loose by wind or wildlife, and they'll drop very close to the mother plant. Other examples, in addition to this eastern bee balm, is Virginia mountain mint and blue vervain. The calyx tubes on the seed heads of the shakers will turn from green to brown when they're ripe. You can collect the tiny seeds by tipping the seed head over into your hand and tapping to dislodge the seeds as shown in the video, or you can collect the entire seed head for further processing. If you've harvested the entire seed head, allow it to dry for 1 to 2 weeks, and then either tip the seed head over and tap the seeds out, or mash them over a screen or strainer to free the seeds. Next up are the beaks, like the wild columbine on this slide, which have upright seed capsules that split open like a bird's beak when the seeds are ripe. Like shakers, the beaks are naturally shaken loose by the wind or wildlife. In addition to the columbine, there's also foxglove beard tongue, swamp rose mallow, cardinal flower, and nodding onion as other examples. Collect seeds from the beaks when the capsules or the beaks have dried and opened up. Simply tap the seed head into your hand or container. As shown in the video, the tiny seeds will fall out when ripe. Moving on to the cone heads, like this popular purple cone flower, they're the flowers with the cone-shaped centers. The ripe seeds are nestled among the sharp spikes and attached to the central hard cone. Birds eat the seeds and disperse them in their waste. Other species that are cone heads are your rudbeckias, your woodland sunflower, and oxeye sunflower. We recommend you collect the entire stem when the petals have fallen off and the area is brown where the cone attaches to the stem. Allow cone to carefully dry for 1 to 2 weeks. As shown in the video, carefully remove the seeds and spikes from the cone after drying. Separate the seeds from the spikes for storage. A lot of people confuse the spikes with the seeds on the cone flowers. You can tell the difference and see the difference if you cut a coneflower seed head in half. You can see the spikes or the seeds are the things in between those spikes. Crumbly cone heads, which we represented by the common sneezeweed, are cone-shaped or thimbled shape, but they're much softer than the standard cone heads. The tiny disc florets of the crumbly cone heads are eventually replaced by seeds that will crumble when ripe. Seeds of crumbly cone heads are often dispersed by water. In addition to the sneezeweed, there are varieties such as yellow crown's beard and buttonbush. To harvest, these seeds are easily stripped by hand. And they'll reveal a little central cone. And now we'll talk about the shatterers. Shatterers have multiple seeds attached to the stem, like the golden alexanders on this slide. These seeds do not travel far on their own and drop close to the parent plant, often forming colonies. Examples in addition to the golden alexander are the wood anemone and the indigo bush, grasses and sedges. Some shatters can be tough to visually judge for ripeness. Those that ripen in the spring stay green, perhaps as a form of camouflage, and swell slightly. On the other hand, shatters that ripen in the fall typically turn brown or beige when ripe. The large round seed capsules of Zizia ripen slowly in flattened heads called umbels. They are green for much of the summer, and then they gradually turn burgundy and then brown, at which time they can be harvested. You can use a gentle touch test to see if the seeds will easily loosen. To harvest the seeds, crush the capsules to release the dark brown seeds. And finally, the hitchhikers. Like this panicled tick trefoil shown here, they have sticky, bristly, or barbed structures or burrs that contain seeds. Hitchhikers can be dispersed on animal fur or bird feathers, being carried off until they eventually fall off in their new location. They're like Velcro, easily attaching to anything they come in contact with. It's easy to tell when the hitchhikers are ripe. They'll hitch a ride on anything, including your pants. Color can be an indicator, but not always. Gather seeds in the fall and dry them in paper bags for 1 to 2 weeks. To protect your hands from the sticky burrs, use gloves to remove seeds from the pods. You'll notice in the middle photo of the panicled tick trefoil, the flat seed pods, which are called loments, are about 1 inch long, and they each contain 2 or more rounded segments that contain the single round seed or tick, as shown in the last photo. Now I'll give it back to Molly and she'll go over the final steps of seed collecting.
So next we're going to move on to how to care for the seeds once you've collected them. And of course, the first thing to do is drying the seeds. So you want to allow the material you've collected to air dry for about 1 to 2 weeks after you collect. There's going to be one exception to that rule that we're going to get to a little bit later. So at harvest, most of the collected seeds and seed heads contain relatively large amounts of water. Although you can't see it, it's in there. And you have to dry that out to avoid potentially lethal bacterial or fungal growth that can sweep through your seed collection in a matter of a couple of days or sometimes even faster. It can happen overnight. So drying also makes cleaning easier. And it makes the seeds more resistant to bacteria and fungi. It also drives this physiological change in the seed to prepare it for dormancy. Some seeds require drying prior to germination, and it deactivates these certain germination inhibitors. So that's one of the key reasons for drying out your seeds. And then you want to clean the seeds. Once they've dried, you process the seeds to remove the chaff and the other material like leaves and stems and fluff and everything else that's taken in the collection, including insects that may be in there snacking on the seeds. The chaff tends to hold moisture, and leaving that, again, leaves you at the risk of mold in long-term storage. Cleaning also reduces the amount of space you need for storage. And seeds can be processed using a variety of methods like threshing and crushing and other means to separate the chaff and stem and the leaves from the material. So here's Marlene with a slightly different technique for cleaning the, for cleaning the milkweed pods that she showed us before. And one key thing is to work with only one species at a time. You can use newspaper to line your workstation and change it out between seeds, or because hardly anyone gets newspapers these days, you can use disposable plates and just change them out. And you can see how easy this technique was that Marlene was using. She just kind of took everything out of the pods, put it in a bag, put a couple of coins in there, shook it up, snipped the corner, and the seeds popped right out. So let's talk about storing your seeds, which is critical. We can't stress enough to label your seeds. Even though you think you know what they are and you're sure you're going to remember them, believe me, you won't. You know, I pick them and the next day I can't remember which seed is which. So as Marlene had mentioned earlier, you want to include the common name, the scientific name, the location where you picked them, and the date that they were collected. You want to keep them in a dark, dry location. You can store them, again, in paper jars, plastic jars, glass jars, bags, whatever. So for short-term storage of seeds that you plan to sow late in the fall or the winter, you can put them in a baggie in the refrigerator with sand, with about 3 tablespoons of sand to 1 teaspoon of seeds. But you need to make sure that you check these at least weekly, because this is not long-term storage. But you want to check and see if you see mold starting to develop. And if you do, you can spray the moist sand and seeds with hydrogen peroxide. So the best storage condition for dried seeds is to provide constant temperature and humidity. Ideally, this is 50 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, but not at or below freezing. And you want to keep them around 50% or less humidity, which is kind of hard here in Southern Maryland. Frequent fluctuations in either the temperature or the humidity levels stress the seeds, and it can shorten the storage life of the seeds. Low light levels are also desirable. You can store seeds safely in glass jars in or out of the refrigerator if they're thoroughly air dried first. Paper bags and cloth bags are good, but you need to look out for little critters that might be lurking around that want to get in there and eat them, especially if you have them stored like in a garage or outdoor space like that. Now, if you recall, we mentioned earlier, there are some seeds that require special handling and that should not be dried out. Those are the hydrophilic seeds. These seeds have a really, really high moisture content, and if they lose this moisture, the embryo inside will die, and the seeds just won't germinate. So even when stored at optimal temperatures, they quickly lose viability. Two of the key seeds that fall in this category are our much beloved pawpaw and also persimmons. Just collecting seeds is not enough. The goal of collecting seeds should be getting the seeds and more native plants in the ground. So we recommend sharing the seeds with family and friends, swapping with others, and we of course recommend winter sowing. And we're going to be having several winter sowing workshops this winter in the various counties. And if you could stay tuned to the Master Gardener and the Southern Maryland Audubon websites and Facebook pages, we'll be announcing when and where those are. This was a workshop we did last year that people just really had a great time at in Charles County.
So speaking of winter sowing, this slide is a reminder that you can successfully grow native trees and shrubs from seeds you've collected. The plants you see here are pawpaw, beautyberry, and redbud. All were grown from seeds that I collected in the fall of 2021 and winter sowed in January of 2022. They germinated last year, but as you noted, they're still in their cups. But these 2-year-old seedlings will be transplanted into the ground this fall.
There are tons of great resources out there on native plants, native seed collection from various Master Gardener organizations, from Southern Maryland Audubon and other Audubon websites. Also, the Master Gardener, Charles County Master Gardener website has tons of information on any kind of gardening that you could possibly want. And in addition to native plants, Master Gardeners, we also have programs on vegetables, pollinators, composting, baywise, protecting the bay and its tributaries, and plants. And at Southern Maryland Audubon, we offer lots of bird walks, monthly bird talks. So both the Master Gardener websites and the Southern Maryland Audubon websites have lots of great information about all our programs, all our workshops and talks.